Fyson, you have the call.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to contribute to the debate on this necessary and important bill, providing as it does an opportunity to reflect on the priorities of the government when it comes to spending the scarce resources that are available to it in its stewardship of the public finances in government. And this is necessarily now 3 years in to what's now proving to be a really tired and an ill-performing government, an opportunity to just look at where the priorities are and where the actions have not come along to match the words in so many examples. And we've seen that in the most serious way when, as I say, here we are in 2025. This is a time for outcomes, and we've gone beyond the time for election commitments. We've gone beyond the time for the announcements of the great things to come, and we've come to a time for outcomes. And if one, as South Australians will do in only a few short months, let alone when it comes to the time to scrutinise the budget in just a few weeks' time, South Australians make up for themselves that list of outcomes and then match them to the list of promises of Malinowskis Labor, then that will be a sobering exercise indeed for South Australians. They'll see that back in about May of 2021, before the election, the then Malinowskis-led opposition said, well, elect us and we'll deliver you this great new world of hydrogen power that's going to be wonderful for the people of the Upper Spencer Gulf, those within the Member for Giles district. It'll be wonderful for the livelihoods and industry up there, and even if it doesn't do anything for household bills, it'll chart a way forward and it'll provide the necessary confidence that we're all needing in this state around energy infrastructure. And what have we seen as the result of these years that have now gone past? Well, 2025 was the year for outcome. That was the year for delivery. That was the year when this was all supposed to come to fruition. But in what might be highlighted, others will have more to say. Of course, Member for Schubert, the Shadow Minister for Health, will have more to say and says it along with all of us on the health side every day, and we'll be pressing that point. But in what might loom as among the most disastrous of the compare-contrast to commitment, announcement, and then, disastrous black hole vacuum of nothing rather than outcome, we've seen the government walk away from the commitment and while doing so kind of see if it could shoehorn it into a completely unrelated topic, another disaster that's hit the poor old Member for Giles and those wonderful people in Whyalla in particular with the trials and tribulations yet again of the steelworks. Tried to kind of, make it somehow relate to the two, and so the hydrogen promise that's turned into a mirage. Not only has it been just stopped at the moment when it was supposed to come to fruition, but it sort of belled the cat on the absence of anything that went on in the period since the promise to the point when it was supposed to come along. So the member for Giles' interjection says, well, there are greater priorities that have intervened, and I'm with the member for Giles on this point. There can be nothing more serious than what's befalling the people of Whyalla just now, and we're with them every single day. But for the government to kind of hide the hydrogen farce behind that very serious issue really talks to a government that is not being fair income with the people of South Australia. Because in the period 2021 to 2025, what we should have seen is this kind of steady process towards building something, because we all knew something fairly serious needed to be built, and it was quite new, so you needed experts to be employed to get that done. And so by 2025, if the government was going to walk away from something, then we ought to have been able to look at something that was kind of more or less 100% built. But no, what we've seen is this kind of tail between the legs. We're not doing it anymore. And yeah, there are a few parts that are kind of on the way. And we've been paying salaries for a whole lot of time to a bunch of people who are sort of supposed to be delivering this this sort of grand construction. But now we're actually, not only do we have nothing to show for it, but we're going to sell it off for parts if and when the parts arrive from somewhere else. And guess what? We'll make sure that we get more or less, maybe, if we're lucky, what we paid for it. Well, South Australians are going to be rapidly sick of seeing this sort of compare-contrast. What did bright and shiny Malinauskas Labor look like before and during and around the time of the election on hydrogen, and what happened in 2025? Well, we'll let the people of South Australia be the judge. And I've referred to the member for Schubert and her dedication every day to holding the government to account on its failed headline health promise, and there's no running away from that. Corflutes, when they were still permitted on the public infrastructure, shouting loud with a smiling face of the then Leader of the Opposition, the now Premier, Peter Malinauskas, saying, we'll fix the ramping crisis, we'll fix the ramping crisis, we'll fix ramping. Because that's what people of South Australia have characterised this aspect of health management in this state as being focused on. Of course, the contributing factors include all aspects of the admission and occupation of beds in the health system. We know the pressure that's there, driven by mental health issues. We know the pressure that's there, driven by the need for improved aged care. We know the pressure that's there based on the provision and availability of sufficient GP capacity. That is a multifaceted challenge. We all know that health and its delivery is a major primary responsibility of the state government, and Malinauskas Labor opposition, now Malinauskas Labor government, chose to tell South Australians on every piece of public infrastructure they could find it would fix ramping. And the complete opposite has occurred, of course, as is well known. A complete opposite has occurred. And we've gone tens of thousands of hours of ramping, sometimes 5 stories high, of ambulances literally parked up once against the other, literally, on story after story. And we've seen sort of bright and shiny ambulance station openings. We've seen commitments to these additional resources. I've attended them, and they're wonderful people, and they're wonderful provision of service that the paramedic specialists and ambulances are able to provide. But the government has gone nowhere to fixing ramping. It's gone nowhere to even approach achieving an outcome that matched that shiny commitment. There's just 2 statewide. And of course, within my own portfolio responsibilities, I've done what I can diligently each year to hold the government to account in relation to its responsibility for those most vulnerable in our state, those most vulnerable children in our state who require the commitment of resources and capacity in managing their vulnerability, short or long term, via the child protection provision in this state. And I said at the very outset, at the first occasion for a financial analysis, when the government applied what it called operating efficiencies to just about every department, but with the exception of the Department for Child Protection, it allowed more resources to the Department of Child Protection. And I said to the Minister at the time, is the provision of more money in this space a declaration of success or a declaration of failure? And let that be a rhetorical question, because what needed to be seen was that those additional resources that were allowed, in contrast to the claimed operating efficiencies, by the way, they evaporated. The government blew out its budgets on all those departments as well. Did it achieve something more for those additional resources? And no, unfortunately, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have seen failure after failure after failure by this government on the child protection side, notwithstanding the additional resources that have been provided. And not only have the additional resources been budgeted, but the government has blown the budget repeatedly, even to the extent that last year there had to be a budget revision to take away resources because it had just been so far exceeded. There's been nothing to show for it. The area of child protection in this state has been now in crisis for a sustained period of time, and it is well and truly on the record that the Premier needs to step in and dramatically to change the way in which child protection is managed in the state. So there's three highlight examples of where we will be looking very closely indeed at what the budget provides for, and I know South Australians will be judging for themselves what announcement on the one hand looks like compared to the absence of outcome by contrast on the other. Locally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government has made clear its commitment or lack thereof to Hyson over this last year and more, and we will continue to speak up for the interests of those in the hills, my constituents in Hyson. To take as an example the tremendous effort of the community to retain the Stirling Hospital, a fight that took place over the better part of 2023. And I highlight there the stark contrast between the government's behaviour towards the Stirling Hospital and when good things were happening compared to its hour of need in 2023. In October 2022, Minister Picton was only too happy to come along to Stirling Hospital and cut the ribbon on the opening of new ward that was entirely funded by the generous donations and good management of the Stirling Hospital. The Minister was only too happy to come along and cut the ribbon. But when it came to a moment of need, when the hospital said, well, we're in real strife, a few months later on, the Minister was very quick to wash his hands of the hospital, to say, well, it's a private hospital, we won't have anything to do with it. And the people of Stirling and surrounding districts, just like they were 100 years ago when it came to the challenge to establish the hospital, were moved to do all that was necessary to retain the hospital at Stirling. And it was a tremendous achievement that outcome was achieved. The hospital's board made the commitment, contrary to what the initial indication had been, to close and move elsewhere, to stay put and to stay in Stirling. It's a tremendous outcome, and the work will continue, no thanks to the Malinauskas Labor government. There are many other examples of need in the hills that the government even gets as close as to promising to support the fulfilment of, but then you've got to be very careful that they don't just back away from that. You've got to hold them to the commitment. In Meadows, the Meadows intersection has long been in need of safety improvement, and by the provision at its centre of a roundabout and safety for pedestrians and those using the intersection on all sides. And the government went as far as in January last year advising the Mount Barker Council, oh, this will be done. And it's done out of the $150 million fund that's provided for Hills infrastructure upgrades. But, it got to the end of last year and the government had the CE write to the council and say, oh, well, actually, it's sort of, to put it in the vernacular, it's gone off on the back burner. It's not funded. And it's a travesty because the promise that the government made to do it wasn't just a kind of blue sky, we'll now work on, what it might all end up costing. That was a promise made in the full knowledge of developed plans, done in November 2023, and it was done with all of that in front of the government. And so that indication to Mount Barker Council at the end of last year was unacceptable. Local community knew that, and thank goodness over the course of recent weeks and months in fighting for the restoration of that work, we've seen the government turn around and promise that it will be done actually, and it'll be done sometime after the election. So it looks like it'll be up to state Liberal government to deliver on that because Malinauskas Labor has just sort of pushed it down the road. Meadows community will stand strong in solidarity. I'll be right there with them and we'll make sure that the actions match the words. The Macclesfield School crossing is work that is sadly in need of completion. We call for that work to be done. We'll be looking closely at the budget to see that work is completed. There are so many small country primary schools spread throughout Hyson. Many of them battle on with the over the odds commitment of a small number of staff members. I pay particular tribute to Principal Donna Lean at Kangarilla Primary School, long-standing, dedicated principal of that small school, in order to make sure that it works for families in Kangarilla. Donna Lean runs, at her own initiative, a breakfast club and a homework club, and she's there from 7 in the morning through to 5 or 6 in the evening. And I want to say thanks to the Minister for Education and his office for their engagement with the particular needs of that school. We'll be looking closely at the budget to see that there is provision for those needs of that school, that small primary school at Kangarilla and others like it in the near vicinity. Of course, Mr Deputy Speaker, the South East Freeway remains a key piece of infrastructure for our whole state, indeed for the nation. It's very, very important that we see a federal coalition government elected on the weekend so that we can see the state and federal Liberal and coalition commitments to see the Truro freight route completed. Only federal coalition and state Liberal will ensure that that happens. The work to get the Verdun completed is critically important, as is the work to ensure a bypass for Harndorf is properly done. There is much more to be done, but only state Liberal and federal coalition will be able to serve the needs of those in the Hills. We'll be watching the budget closely.